cool. Resident Evil 2 is one of the best games I have ever played, personally. I started with the remake because I suck, and you should hate me and hit me in the head with my brain with the brick. My smooth little brick brain, you should lick it. 2 was my first Resident Evil, and I noticed 2 things off rip. One, I ripped mine. This is some of the most fun I've ever had backtracking in a game. That's number 1. And number 2 is, I have checked the same hallway 84 times, and I just may dare to admit that on the 83rd time, I'm starting to think that the 10-hour average playtime is somewhat synonymous with saying that $130,000, that's like the median family income in America. You know what I'm trying to say here? Like, I see the numbers, but how true it may be pales in comparison to what I'm looking at right now. The simplistic but not insulting puzzle solving coupled with the Zelda-style dungeon crawling gameplay thingy, it's awesome. It's everything I love. It's a concentrated hit of discovery in a video game, and I love doing that stuff in video games. My favorite games tend to be a pretty vanilla mashup of adventure mechanics. I love games that have like 16 different styles of gameplay and are just pretty okay at each individual style. It creates a game that ends up being the sum, not the sum, what am I trying to say here? Not the sum of its parts. Yes, more than the sum of its parts. Ocarina of Time is like this. Haha, I brought it up again, you didn't think I would. Good puzzles, good exploration, good combat. The only thing that I could imagine you could consider like incredible and still like no one's done it as well before in the modern day is the music. The rest of the mechanics have been done more impressively over gaming history. It's just what it is. But them all coming together in Ocarina of Time is what creates one of the greatest games ever made, because it's not the combat that makes it great, it's not the puzzles, it's not the story, blah blah blah, it's all of them coming together and creating like one of the hardest to critique games ever. It's a holistic experience because one element doesn't always rise above the rest. Resident Evil challenged me in this way because now you have 2 elements that are incredible. You have art design and you have, what did I write down? Navigation. These 2 elements are so excellent that they define the game. And the other features range from pretty good to pretty bad, depending on the game, you know? Depending on the game, the acting can be good.
Daddy's coming. We need to go.
Daddy?
Or really good. The combat can be great, or even better. The puzzles can be clever, or RE2 Remake is one of my favorites because it has one of the most consistent concentrations of all of these elements in one game, making it mechanically airtight compared to a game like, say, Resident Evil 1, which soars above 2 in terms of atmosphere in my opinion, but greatly lacks in ease of play and interesting tactile mechanics. Every Resident Evil is a uniquely worthy game. I would consider it one of the best game series of all time. I don't feel like that's an exaggeration. But what if there's stuff that's still just is bad? My favorite Resident Evil game is either 4 or Village, and before you comment, LARP, true. But yes, I have played 1, 2, 2 Remake, 3, 4, 4 Remake, 5, 7, 8, and 9. I've not finished all of them, but I have played them all. I haven't played 6 or Revelations, though. And I think the old games are just as great as the new ones in totally different ways. It just so happens that I kinda like the new ones a little bit more. And yes, I prefer 4 Remake to 4 Original because I'm an iPad baby. Regardless, even the best, most holistic Resident Evil game, 4, sometimes feels absolutely not that good to play. I love games that make me feel free physically. Spider-Man, Sonic, Mario, just the freedom of these games to not be constrained by your environment is not, you can't understate it or overstate it, however you say that. It feels like a breath taken away from the claustrophobia of everyday life. So sometimes when I play Resident Evil, I get freaking anxious, and not in the, this game design is so good, it's immersing me in the horror type of way. Like it's in the there's a scratch in my lungs that I can't itch kind of way. Leon exists in an over-the-shoulder context, which means you have a similar degree of movement that you do in games like Last of Us, God of War, basically any AAA Sony slap. And what that typically means is that the game will give you very little to say in the way that you move beyond the cardinal directions, and the occasional dodge, parry, or sprint. Not a bad thing inherently, but I've realized over time how abstractly this affects me as a gamer. I'm not only claustrophobic, but I also have like terrible breath control, right? I should pay you like I'm talking to my therapist. And what that means is games with tactile freedom make me feel freaking awesome and able to forget the little things that I'm faced with when I'm not on the move. How am I breathing? How clean is my room? How comfortable is this chair? This sounds incredibly dumb if you don't have OCD, but trust me, the real ones, they'll get it. My OCD loader, freeloader, people who share my condition. So in Resident Evil, a game where you're usually in close quarters, your sprint starts 8 years after you click in the left stick. Your turn speed is by necessity much slower than mouse and keyboard, and the best fix that you have for this is a quick turn that works pretty well, and a dodge that is reliable as the Powerball. I get freaking freaked out my freaky. Whilst mechanically it adds incredibly well to the horror atmosphere, I'll never debate that. It does function as a style of design that is deliberately unfun for me in multiple ways. The reason I find this interesting is because I enjoy the terror that is wrought with it, but I don't actually like how it feels most of the time. There are many old and limited games that eventually read as genius due to their mechanical limitations. What once felt like a sloppy restriction of control in Mario 64 eventually becomes the exhilarating risk or reward of not having Sunshine era one-to-one control over Mario. This can be done really well. It's just true, but these little details in Resident Evil 4 always kind of confuse me. It's one of my favorite games ever made. Full stop. So why can't I rationalize these in the same way that I do other games? Okay, so in Resident Evil 7, right? You're locked to a first-person view, PT style, for the entire game, which greatly adds to the reality of this being the scariest game in the series. Keyboard and mouse feels amazing here, especially the shooting. The shooting is amazing in like every title since 4. It's awesome. I adore that every single time you shoot an enemy, they react and make it harder for you to get another shot in the location that you shot them. Shoot them in the head, and it'll be harder to shoot them in the head because they might be like clasping their head or like, I don't know, jiggling around a lot. It constantly keeps you on your toes by forcing you to fight the enemy in a harder way. It's just inconvenient and less predictable, and that's what makes it awesome. This is especially great in 7, where the preferred reliance on mouse and keyboard makes your precision all the greater. It feels more like a frantic struggle to headshot your enemy than a careful activity, both of which are great. 7 does claustrophobia incredibly well. The first-person view really makes all the Clunk feel directly tied to the horror in a way that over-the-shoulder games can't really achieve as well. That's an example of the Mario 64 effect I discussed being modernized. Your visual limitations make the inability to make more dynamic decisions a preferred form of excitement, as opposed to the idea of flying around the whole house. Like bursting through the windows. I don't know. That would not make the game as fun. It would make it feel like Gmod. This is something I don't experience in the same way as 4, where despite it being my favorite, it just isn't as scary nor as immersive as 7. The clunk of your controls feels more like a stylistic choice that you must learn to adapt to, rather than an intentional limitation that perfectly aligns with the game's purpose. But likewise, you must sacrifice the diverse and freaking amazing combat of 4 if you want to play 7 and feel helpless, and that imbalance is what makes Resident Evil such a perfect series. Not just perfect, but versatile. I know not all the games are great. I just be using words like that sometimes, you know. I get a little funny. 7 feels more immersive. 4 feels more fun. Now, 1 has this in a different way. It isn't as scary as 7 or 8, it's not as fun as 4, it doesn't have the story or characters of 2, it isn't as exciting as 5, etc. But undeniably, it is one of the most gorgeous games I have ever played. Pre-rendered backgrounds are my favorite visual trend in any video game to this day. Where it excels is in its contemplative steadiness. contemplative, or contemporary. Enemies are not frequent. The mansion is quiet and scarce. There's so much room to breathe here compared to any other title. The camera angles are the best in any title, and overall, the horror just comes from the rare breaks and that melancholic fell asleep at your grandma's house type vibe. But unlike 4, I don't really find myself missing the features or immersion of other titles. 1 perfectly achieves what it wants to, so well, in fact, that you don't even notice or care about the imbalance of mechanics, the sacrifices that you have to make in returning to it, the absence of what makes the other titles excel. I think it is in this light that interpreting 4's flaws becomes easier for me. I don't love the control scheme. It's not as scary as the other titles, but it sacrifices just enough of everything to become more than the sum of its parts. It's not the scariest, it's not the most striking environment, it's not the best story, but it is the best and most balanced culmination of all of these factors, which kind of makes it unbeatable in a way. The Clunk contributes just enough to the survival horror feeling without it being as brilliant as 7. The setting is great enough to be immersive without being enrapturing, and the combat, yeah, well, the combat is just kind of perfect, I won't lie. Maybe the game does have one crowning achievement. Regardless, my point still stands. Imbalance justifies flaws through how amazing a couple aspects are, and balance can temper the possible heights, but provide little to no room for actual criticism. Both incredibly fun styles of game to play. But what about when imbalance challenges you so much that you have to adapt? Is backtracking in Resident Evil to find your key items in the storage box fun? No. Is having limited saves fun? No. Is having no autosave enjoyable? Yup! No, these are all difficulty creators that make the whole game more thrilling, but it's at the cost of not living up to the challenge that you will have a really bad time. It segments your dopamine in a way. Low dopamine gets lower every time you fail until you eventually get a big hit, like in Dark Souls. It's the type of gameplay that supports an experience of a wider range of emotions than just, wow, this is really fun. And dang it, sometimes that's just hard as heck for me. I have a job. I have stress in my real life. Why would I want to stress myself out on a game?
I don't believe that. That is a joke. I'm making it, that's a bit, okay?
But honestly, look, sometimes it can feel like that. Sometimes. You just want to relax and get a constant stream of fun that feels both enjoyable and meaningful. Sometimes games that replicate the emotional highs and lows, the build-ups and the payoffs of real life, they can feel way too tiring to commit to depending on the time in the week. But my goodness, once in a blue moon, dude, for me, it hits. That's why I've beaten every FromSoft game, and I love all of them. And it's why I love Resident Evil. It's one of the best series ever because it has all of that. 1 is punishing, but feels amazing when you succeed. 2 and 3 are similar. 4 is a streamlining of what makes the whole series great. 5 is constant action fun. 7 is absurdly immersive, as well as 8. And I could go on. It's always the same core gameplay philosophy, expressed in whatever way you feel like experiencing that day. It cannot be beat in its versatility. My favorite thing about this series is that it constantly both challenges me and validates me. I can learn how to appreciate the clunk of a title to fully embrace its best attributes, and I can sit back to enjoy something that doesn't force me to get on its level to have a good time. Neither is sloppier or better than the other. It's the perfect collection of games that, for someone like me, who can never choose what I love the most about games. I love it all. Every feeling a game can give you, and with Resident Evil, I get it all. Now, sometimes I struggle, you don't automatically get on a game's level just when you boot it up. You have to be in the mood. That's important. Just because you feel like playing one game more than the other doesn't mean that you dislike a style or particular expression of gaming. You may just not want to have your hand held that day, or vice versa. Dude, I freaking love these games, even the ones that suck. Even the stuff that sucks. Tank controls, artificial difficulty, what the heck?
Ever, dude.
Valid criticism of these games, or any game in general, doesn't have to always end in a qualitative assessment. Sometimes it's where the embrace of a game's strengths, in spite of its weaknesses, or even due to its weaknesses, can begin. Yeah, play Resident Evil. Have fun on your day. You should subscribe. Or I'm gonna inject you with the T virus.